These are the last three problems on the study guide for Test 3, Quarter 3 for Algebra A. So let's take a look at the number 7 here, and it asks us what are the x-intercepts for the quadratic function. So here we're just having to use the zero product property. So what we're going to do is we're going to take since we're trying to find x-intercepts, we're going to take this y value and set it equal to 0. And then we're going to go ahead and take these two factors and set each individually equal to 0 to figure out what makes this factor 0 and what makes this expression here 0. So we go ahead and do x plus 3 equals 0. And we're setting up the other one, 2x minus 1 equal to 0. So when I do the work here, I just have to subtract 3 from all sides on this one. Here I'm adding the 1 to both sides. So I'm solving both equations at the same time. And here I have x is negative 3. Well, this one's solved, but here I have one more step. You see you have that 2x, that 2 in front of the x term. That's called a coefficient. And we need to get rid of that. And so we're going to divide by 2, so x is by itself. And so now I've got x equals 1/2. So that's one of the solutions. Negative 3 is the other one. And that's what you write in your brace. So the brace represents the solution set. The x-intercepts, anyhow you express it to me, it's fine. Well, let's take a look at this next one. Y equals negative x plus 3. So we talked about using the y-intercept first. And so if this is just an x squared term and a no x term, just a plus 3, we're going to start 3 spaces up. It's just the y-intercept. And then we're going to use that parent graph. So remember, the parent graph ends up looking like this. It's just the y equals the x squared term, negative 1 times by x squared. Now I put the negative 1 here because of the minus sign. So when you see a minus sign, it represents negative 1 being multiplied by x squared. And so if you plug in a 1 and you square it, and you multiply it by negative 1, you end up with negative 1. So 1 squared made 1 times by negative 1 makes negative 1. So what that means is from the vertex. Again, the parent graph, you always go from the vertex, not from the origin. It's not an ordered pair. It's always from the vertex. It's kind of like using slope to graph a line. It's the same sort of concept. We're going from a point. Here I'm going from the vertex over one space in the x direction, because that's what I did here, and I'm going in the y direction down one space because it was a negative 1. Now you can go the other way on the x direction. Negative 1 squared is 1 times by negative 1 also gives you negative 1. So either way you get that answer. 2 squared, you get 4 times by negative 1, because again that minus 1 in front of the x squared term makes a negative 4. So that means if you go over 2 spaces, you go down 4. Over 2 spaces the other direction, down 4. And then from there we can graph our quadratic. So that's what it ends up looking like. So they all look that way as long as they're just negative x squareds. Positive x squareds go the other way. Kind of like this one here. Notice how it went over 1, up 1. Over 2, up 4 spaces. And what we're looking for here are the real roots. These are the x-intercepts, or the solutions. And we call them x-intercepts because we take this y value here and we're setting it equal to 0 each time when we're solving for x. And so that's what we're doing here. We're trying to find out where it crosses the x-axis. So you go along the x-axis and you put a dot where it crosses, and then from there figure out what point that is, how many spaces from the origin. Here it's negative 1, over here it's 1, 2, 3 spaces, so your answer is negative 1, 3. And so that's what we're doing when we're trying to solve a quadratic. When we're solving for those x-intercepts, we're trying to find out where it crosses the x-axis. Those are the points. So those are the problems you'll see on this week's test. Good luck.